Peace and love, family. Welcome to another Read Book Club discussion. This is your sister, Dr. Ma'at, in the building, and I have my brothers, Sean P. and Brother Everett. We're in the building tonight, the READ Book Club, and we are reading Birth of a Nation. I know the sun is behind me, guys, but Birth of a Nation, The Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today by Dr. Jacqueline Battalora. Last week we met to discuss, I believe it was the introduction. Last week we met to discuss the introduction of this book. Tonight we're going to discuss chapter 1 of this book. All right. So if you don't have this book, family, it's not too late. Let me move on over. I don't want this sun to keep. It's not too late, family, to get the book. If you haven't, if you don't got it, get it. And even if you don't want to get it or don't want to read it, still join in and participate in the discussions. Okay. Also, if you are a Read Book Club member, and if you're not a Read Book Club member, visit Hockey_Customs on Instagram to get your Read Book Club shirt. Regain, elevate, aspire, and determine. All right. So you can go to Hockey_Customs on Instagram, or you can email. If you don't have an Instagram page, you can email the brother Harvey. That is HARVEY.Lewis, LEWIS at gmail.com. But before we get tonight's discussion started, it was brought to my attention, my warrior sister, Tawanda Jones. She called me today. She called me. I said, Tawanda, I'm out with the family. And she said, Doc, it's very important. You need to pick up this phone. And when I called Sister Tawanda back, I found out she was calling to tell me that one of my comrades, Sister Paula Muhammad, has transitioned. And she's one of my comrades. Her husband is a comrade of mine, Brother Ramsey Muhammad. And you all have heard them. If any of you have ever tuned into the Truth to Power talks, in my introduction, I play a hip hop song. That hip hop song is called Truth to Power. And that was created by a husband and wife team. They started a group called Armaday. And so when you hear that coming in the Truth to Power talk with Dr. Ma'at, that was the song that was produced by the husband and wife team. And they, the husband, brother Ramsey Muhammad, he lost his wife. They had 2 children. And so the community of Baltimore, we're all shooken up right now. We're really shooken up right now. So keep them in your prayers, send them positive energy, send them or keep them in positive thought. Okay. Please keep them in positive thought. I mean, I was distraught when I found out, boohooing and crying. My family's looking at me like, what's going on? And it's just unfortunate, that this sister transitioned. So before we get started, I do want to play a video in honor of our dear sister, Paula Muhammad.
You are now about to witness the power of street knowledge.
This ain't for people who think violence ain't the answer. This is for FOI, black gorillas and black panthers. This is Farrakhan with a pair of bombs. This Moses in Egypt freeing his people from the Pharaoh's arms. The American statement to murder us on pavements, then tell us they ain't racist and all niggas stupid cavemen. This is my rebuttal. Ain't shit about it subtle. Fuck the police, sincerely. Tesla from the struggle. This country got it twisted. The soldiers I got enlisted are brutal, bullet, ballistic, meaning that we're sadistic from years of fighting the system. So ain't no cop killing me. Death coming free, so my bullets be a trilogy. Allahu Akbar, protect me from these mock laws. Let my fists be strong, I hit them until they lock jaws. My power's attack mode, I live in attack mode. I'm done seeing sons get put in their black holes.
There will be no peace without justice. There will be no unity while there's poverty. See, racism isn't about you. It's a system, and only systems combat systems.
I came in the door, I said it before. Never let the white cops harass me no more, but they fighting me, sniping me. I can't hold them back. I'm searching for a sign. I got to react, cause prisons getting filled here, graveyards filled here. What more can I say? We getting killed here. It's kind of funny they call us the minority until it comes down to cop killers and poverty. The death rate, oh now we the majority. Got a black face on them. Don't be surprised if my black blood splatters from a black man screaming Black Lives Matter. Still ain't nothing changed from the slave days to the day. Emmett Till soul screaming justice for Freddie Gray.
We need understanding. We need patience. What we really need is love. See, hate can't erase hate. Understand, only love can.
Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the beast. Bang, 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 toe tag on their feet. Whoop, whoop. That's the sound of the police. Unknown black man laying dead on the street. Serial killer, the real drug dealer. Domestic terrorist, wear them caps cause it fit. Kill my generation and then tell us to forget. We won't forget black power, power fist. Paradigm shift exposing all the lies. Please kill a women say it's suicide. Tired of hearing other mamas cry. Decide will you be on when it's time to ride. They making the blame excuses to justify the abuse. Some put it on how we dressed when Martin got shot in the suit. Black on black crime is a problem, just don't let that justify. I'ma keep protesting till I close my eyes.
That siren is the sound of the beast. Badge number 666. My heart is a crucifix. I repel the hell of white supremacist spells. Terrorist cells got my people in cells. This is a breakout, a breakup letter with oppression. A signed contract with the ghosts of my murdered people. They tell me police gun sounds or drum sounds, it's wartime. And I'm suited in Zulu. Tribe of Shabazz imprinted on my shells. The melanin braveheart. Every word I speak is a rebellion. A spear to the chest of the incest of Uncle Sam fucking his own people. This is a riot in 4D. Play me loud enough, I'll reach to the speakers and strangle a policeman. This is an uprising from the graves. Zombified leaders and gangbangers are marching toward police departments. That's what they get for filling graveyard crypts with bloods. This is a revolution, resurrection.
Again. I mean, I'm over here. My heart is heavy. I'm sorry. My heart is really, really heavy tonight. Because the sister who was rapping that you saw, that was Sister Paula Muhammad. I want to just say rest in paradise, Sister Paula Muhammad. She was a beautiful, beautiful soul. She loved her people and she was down for the revolution. She was down for the revolution. So I just want to say rest in paradise to Paula Muhammad again, and just send, keep her family up. Please keep her family, everyone, in positive thoughts and prayer. Let's lift them up. Those were her children in the video that you saw. Those were her children. She had a son and a daughter. And I know you all are familiar with my son, Jalen. He was in the video. You saw my son, Harvey. You saw Isaiah. We were all in the video. And I remember when we shot the video down in front of the Freddie Gray Memorial in Baltimore, right off of, I believe that's Fulton Street, right off of that street. So anyway, we're going to start with Birth of a Nation. Birth of a Nation, chapter 1. Chapter 1. All right. And so in this particular chapter, I just want to drive it home of what she discussed, kind of summarize it for you all. Let me pull it up, give you a little summary of what was discussed. I think I had it highlighted. Okay, so in this particular chapter, she explored the initial appearance of the group of humanity called whites, addressing the motivations for the creation, those who constituted this group, and ideas that helped give rise to the new category of humanity. She said, we will look into why white was selected over other possibilities. Finally, we will examine constructive, i.e. pieces that combine to create the category, and persuasive efforts. And by persuasive efforts, she means efforts to make the category make sense, deployed in the creation of whites. All right. So again, I see that you all are coming in. Peace to everyone in the building. Tonight, we are going to discuss chapter 1 of Birth of a Nation, the Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today by Dr. Jacqueline Battalora. If you don't have the book, if you haven't read the chapter, still stay in the discussion, still participate in the discussion. My mom is not a part of the book club, and she listened last week and she said, oh, I learned a few things. So be sure, let me get over here because that's son. So be sure to make sure that you just, even if you don't have the book, or if you haven't read the chapter, still participate in the discussions, all right? Because you're going to learn a few things. So brother Everett, I had muted you while while I was playing the video. Okay. But go ahead and start it off. Tell me in chapter 1. Let's go ahead and discuss the first couple of pages in chapter 1.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah, let's roll.
Well, I was really excited about this chapter, and it actually, man, this could have been a book on the first chapter alone. What really got me excited was just learning how the whole thing started, and then it kind of blew my mind as they went in. But she really starts off talking about what we call whites, what whites were actually called before. It was pretty much not a color race type of thing. It was that you might be Brazilian, British, things of that nature. So that really stood out to me straight off the bat. Then she goes into it a little bit about how white people and black people were like both indentured slaves. White people could buy the freedom. They could purchase guns, which was very weird for me because you just think of slavery and black people. But what really threw me off was when she started talking about, and this is real early in the chapter, she started talking about how many men versus women were in the colonies. And I think that was very important as we start talking about the laws and you start talking about the how they wanted to empower the rich white people and separate the white slaves from the black slaves. I thought this was more important when she mentioned how it was probably, I think at one time it was a lot, but I think when the slavery started hitting, it was like 7 men to 1 female, and how the white females would rather marry a black slave than a white master.
That's what she said.
And that threw me off. And I'm sitting up here like, wow. So that really tells you a little bit about, I know we want to talk about how the black slaves and the white slaves started to unite and they didn't like that. But I'm thinking of a sexuality thing. If it's only 1 female to every 7 males, and they were allowed to, white people and black people in the beginning of the chapter were allowed to marry each other, and a free white woman would rather marry a black slave, I thought that might have been something that I never even thought about. I never even knew. And I think that was a very critical that I got in the first part of the chapter.
Beautiful, beautiful. I mean, I was stunned too when but it made sense. I was stunned, brother Everett, but it made sense because back then they were trying to produce tobacco. They were farming tobacco. And so they were bringing in laborers, people who could farm. And so they were bringing in, you had the European indentured servants coming over, then you had Africans coming over. And so I understand why there was a sexual imbalance. That's what she calls it in the book. Mm-hmm. I understand that there was that sexual imbalance because it was the priority of the colony was to produce tobacco, and they needed the men there. And so, but what did shock me, like you said, was when the woman said, well, no, I would rather marry this guy, this African, than this guy over here who may be wealthy, and that speaks to how European males treated the European woman. Yeah. I remember in the documentary that's coming out, Buck Breaking, brother Tariq Nasheed is releasing that on April the 30th. I am in the documentary. Dr. Kaba Khamenei, he's also in the documentary. And during the trailer, he says that everything the European man did to black people, he did it to his woman first. He says that in the trailer. And so when I was reading this and I read that the woman said, I would rather marry this, black African slave, right? or, you know, I would rather marry him than this white wealthy merchant or planner. It speaks to how European women were treated by European men. Brother Sean P, do you want to chime in, brother?
Oh yeah, I'll chime in, man. I could so many things I could say right there, what you just said, but I'm gonna just go on the things that they did to each other first before they did it to us. How long they had those white servants over here way before they was coming get us. They was already practicing all these different things on themselves first. And it's mind blowing because you never normally get that in school or anywhere else. Whenever they're talking about how we were side to side with the white slaves and in the field working with them, and you try to imagine in your mind, you in the field working elbow to elbow with the white slaves. And then whatever their lunch break was, you eating on side of them. And whenever it's time to knock off and go home or whatever that was called, you in the same quarters, living together, sleeping together, communing together. That's a crazy visual in your mind to think about that most of us never have stopped and really visualized and thought about. You know, I wonder how those relations was back then versus how it is even now. I wonder if the relationship was more improved back then versus how it is even now. Like going to a job right now with your fellow coworkers, you got to share the break room and all of that. But this is on the backside of hundreds of years of stuff going on and fighting for rights and all kind of stuff. But back at that time, they must have had better relations even than that, I would think. I was thinking about that today when I was at work, thinking about like, wow, what that was like back then, I wonder.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And I love how in the beginning of this chapter, she talked about law. And I remember saying this years ago, and I was talking about marijuana in the context of marijuana and even homosexuality. I was saying whenever you want to normalize a behavior, the first thing they do, and this is just what I've noticed from observation, they legalize it, whatever it is, selling marijuana, you know, same-sex marriages, it's legalized. Then after it's legalized, the media is used to promote it. And then it trickles into the educational systems. That is what they do. And so when I read this, and she started talking about law and how law was used to create the category whiteness and to make it make sense. So then throughout the chapter, she get into these different laws. First, she brings up the miscegenation law of 1664. Then she said they revised it in 1681 to include white. In fact, she said that was the first time they even mentioned the human category white in 1681. But then they also passed fornication laws. I believe that was in like 1670. And then there were, I believe it was another law. I may be missing it, but I know it was a miscegenation law. It was a fornication law. And I believe there was like one more law that I'm probably missing. But it shows how the legal system was used to create the category white and how it separated, like you said, Sean, again, we were all together. We were, you know, laboring side by side, but how it separated or caused a division between the laboring class. And she said that division didn't take place until Bacon's Rebellion. And so could one of you brothers break down what happened during Bacon's Rebellion?
I guess I can go. Well, Bacon's Rebellion, the white slaves and the black slaves, they started to rebel against the system. They didn't like the conditions which they were treated. I guess you would say on the plantation that they were working, which led to them uniting. And, you know, the powers that be didn't want them united. So they started putting in these laws to kind of separate them, to have them not being united. For example, they would give the whites a little more power. And that's when they started putting in laws and classifying people as whites. You know, it was another thing too, when you were talking about that law, Dr. Ma'at, that goes to the Bacon Rebellion, is that, you know, it's crazy that blacks and whites were allowed to marry each other. And I think they started changing to where the black man couldn't marry a white woman or have sex with a white woman, or the white woman couldn't have sex with a black man, but the white man could have sex with the black woman to help, you know, produce more slaves. So they started changing the laws after the rebellion to make black slaves permanent slaves and stuff like that. So they were really fearful that of the blacks and whites coming together it's just crazy on that note. But Sean, you probably could get in a little better. I saw you raise your hand on that.
Look,
but
and look, when you say they, I want you all to tell the people who are they, who didn't want the laborer class to get together. Who are we talking about? Go ahead, Brother Sean.
Oh, we're talking about those white folks that was in power at that time. They didn't want that power. They knew. Look, the old saying is, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? So once again, blacks and whites together, both of us in servitude. I don't like them. You don't like them, man. We friends. We homeboys. We plotting and scheming together. I'm down bad. You down bad. I want to get out of servitude. So do you. We planning and plotting together. And I was going to add to that, Dr. Maya. I had listened to that Dr. Battalora interview you did again, and I want to add in there when she said how long that rebellion lasted.
Yes.
People don't realize that wasn't no, I think the Nat Turner rebellion was like, a couple of days or something like that.
Yes.
But this rebellion lasted for like, what, she said a year or like years? It was a long rebellion.
Absolutely. And it started, what, was it 1676 or 1672? I'm looking for it. I believe it started in like 1672. Hold on, here it is. Oh, 1676. That's when it started. Yep, by Nathaniel Bacon. Nathaniel Bacon. And then another thing, while we're talking about the rebellion and what kicked off the rebellion, it says that Nathaniel held contempt for native tribal members who they blamed for the death of numerous servants. So the indigenous folks was killing some of them white folks. Indigenous folks, they were killing some of those European folks. And so Nathaniel was upset about that. And then, of course, they used, they didn't like the conditions, the harsh treatments of the servants. They said people who were free they were stripped of opportunities. They were competing with the landowners and with the elite and with all of the discontent, all of that kind of just culminating into the rebellion. But when we say they family, we're talking about the British elite, as Brother Sean P said, the people who were running the show. They were running the economy, and they were also running the politics. They were making the laws. They were governing the colony at that particular time. And a lot of this really hit home for me, Brother Sean, because my family's from Sumter County, South Carolina, but we migrated to Maryland. And so all of this stuff takes place right in Maryland and Virginia. So the invention of whiteness happened right there in the DMV area, right there. And not only did the invention of the human category white, not only did that invention, it was created in the DMV area. I had brought on Dr. Antero Patella last year to talk about how redlining was rolled out in Baltimore first. We were the pilot city for redlining. And now I'm learning, well, wait a minute. Everyone knows Baltimore's in Maryland. Wow. I'm like, wait a minute. Now
I've never heard that before.
Yeah, so I said, well, wait a minute. Now the invention of whiteness was also piloted right here in Maryland. But go ahead, Brother Sean P. or Brother Ether. I think one of you brothers wanted to get in.
No, it said something earlier about how they made the laws first to change things. And I was thinking about me being in the field of psychology. We've seen it time and time again. Whenever they want to legalize a certain behavior, they take it out of the DSM-5. And so something that's classified as a disorder, whenever they reconvene again and rewrite the book and redo another edition, well, that's not a disorder anymore. That's a perfectly fine behavior. But at first, it was frowned upon. But we see that parallel, and like you said, they changed the laws and the rules and the paperwork first, and then they can do what they want.
Yes, because she said at the end of the day, and I love how she drives this home. And for those who aren't familiar with Dr. Jacqueline Battalora, I think she went to law school. She was a lawyer initially. And so she drives home that laws or legislations are created for needs and desires. So when they're passing these legislations through, family, these laws, you got to ask yourself, what is the need that this law is addressing? Or what is the desire that this law is addressing? You got to ask yourself that, family. But I want to move into, I think we did a good job covering, everything else. But why white? She moves into talking about why white. Because she said back then, you could say I'm British, I'm Portuguese, I'm Dutch, or I'm a Christian.
Dutch.
but they
Yep.
purposely use white, and so she answers why white, right? And so can you all break that down? One of you brothers break that down. Why white? Why not just British or just Christian? Let's talk about that.
Well, one of the things, and when you started talking about the laws they made, and I can't remember which law it was, when they started incorporating the word white instead of British and things of that nature. They started dealing with interracial marriage and stuff like that, and they were that's when it started changing and making white higher than black or African. And I think one of the laws was if you marry a black person, then you're like lower, or you're pretty much starting to devalue color in our race and putting white higher. And that was real weird to me, how we were all together as one. They did, they started changing laws slowly but surely. They changed the law, then they changed the law again till it got to the point where they were saying white people and things like that. Go ahead, Brother Sean.
No, I want to add on what you just said, right?
Yeah.
She said something there about the amount of women at that time that own land.
Mm-hmm.
And they own property. So if a white woman was to marry a black man, now he's getting this property and everything else.
Yeah.
As far as the economics of it.
Yeah.
There's a good book that's called They Were Her Property. They Were Her Property.
Yes.
And you see how many white women own nothing but, like, they was the breadwinners back then.
Sean,
they had the white guys begging the white women, like, please don't divorce me, don't leave me, because of that land. Back to money.
Sean,
so if a white woman marries a black man, the white dude's like, we losing all the land.
That's right.
And
Sean,
I think
John, you got me over here stomping my feet, because typically in a lot of the movies that depict slavery, they always show the white man as the slave master.
Right.
But in the book that Brother Sean is talking about, They Were Her Property, they'll show you that there were just as many white, and I'm gonna go like this, white females who owned slaves. And in her book, it was Dr. Stephanie, she said that white females were also just as brutal as her white counterpart. Mm-hmm. She was just as brutal as he was, but they never showed that in a movie that depicts slavery. They showed the white male as the slave master. They show her as the mistress who was in the house, jealous of his relations that he was having with the African women on the plantation and the mulatto children, and how they show that, but they don't depict her as a slave owner at all. Go ahead, Brother Everett. I know you wanted to get in, brother.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. And another thing that they were saying is that the males back then were dying early. So like white women would be widows. And when they got married at that particular time, the male would kind of incorporate the power of, because of the laws of marriage, that they would incorporate this. So you got a lot of white women with all this power, like you say, slaves, land, marrying black men, because they didn't want to marry white men. And so that was a big thing too, because now you're going to start having a lot of these black men getting all this land, all these resources. So I thought that was critical too, about the white woman and how much power she had.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Go ahead, Brother Sean. I know you wanted to chime in.
Well, now I'm co-signing the brother, man. It's these different things that we never see. Like you said, we never see it in these movies. They show these innocent white women, and she's all lily white and innocent, but like, it goes with that whole white woman tears theory, and the Karens and all that kind of stuff. Like,
teach.
It all goes together. It's all cohesive, man. This whole thing is mind blowing.
It is mind blowing.
It's a large rabbit hole.
It is mind blowing. And shout out to Brother Kofi, Pieside TV. Brother Kofi's in the building. He said, "Give me the name of the book again." We are reading "Birth of a White Nation" by Dr. Jacqueline Battalora, The Invention of White People and Its Relevance Today. The RED Book Club, get your shirt. All right, from Hockey_Customs on Instagram. All right, Regain, Elevate, Aspire, and Determine. If you don't have an Instagram, you can reach out to the brother. It's harvey.lewis@gmail.com. Okay, Harvey, HARVEY. .Lewis, LEWIS @gmail.com. Just shoot him a message in the subject in the subject area, put read book club t-shirt, and he'll make sure he get with you. Okay. All right. So let's get back to why whiteness. I want to drive home these 3 things, these 3 points that she made. Why whiteness? Well, she says the label British alone became increasingly insufficient with the influx of other colonists. So you had the British coming in, the Portuguese, the Dutch. So to try to develop a demarcation line based on just saying you're British or you're not, it was too broad, too narrow, because they were trying to include all of the other different European groups. So you can just say, well, I'm British. So that was one reason. Second reason, she said the designation English and freeborn presented, because back then sometimes they would refer to themselves as English and freeborn. She said it presented its own limitations. The majority of tribal members were born free. So if you say English and freeborn, now you have to include the tribal members, right? It says while some Africans were free as well. So now we can't use those titles, English and freeborn. Okay. And then, so she said, she talks about white, and she said that the category white was very broad. And she also said that it was a phenotype thing. It's visible differences. So you call them white, you're making a visible difference or distinction between us who are African with darker skin and people who are white, or pale. And so she said that it created an ideology of shared identity. And she said that white was also very flexible. She said this gave the new category extremely flexibility. She said because white had no previously established firm guidelines and accepted parameters. So she said it's likely a feature of incredible success and survival. So she said that this invention was successful and it has survived over centuries, calling people white. And we really act like it's a race. We act like it's a race, and it's not. It's all made up. I love how she says in the beginning of the chapter that white and race is an invention upon an invention. All these different concepts are inventions. Someone just made it up, and they made it up to serve a purpose, and that purpose was to divide and conquer, and to continue to enrich themselves through the acquisition of wealth and resources and power. That's what it's all about. Go ahead, brother Sean. He kicking his feet over there.
No, because it's crazy. I've always told my circle, this whole system is so deep and it works so good. I bet you if all those old white guys could get up from the grave for 30 minutes and look around, they'll say, man, it actually worked. All of these years and the idea we had actually worked. That's what they would say.
It worked.
Sad, man. It worked. It worked. Like the new Jim Crow. It worked.
And I wanted to add into that too. A lot of the reasons why they started to create that whiteness is because the conditions, even for the white slaves, was on those plantations was bad. So you had a lot of, they were struggling to get more indentured white servants then, because they were, it was getting back to the British. So they were like, well, we got to figure out something to keep this thing going on. I guess they targeted the blacks in that single thing. Started changing it to 1 minute you can't buy a gun, the next minute, you can't marry a white woman, to the next minute you're a slave, and then the next minute you're slaves for life. You can't buy your freedom. I mean, the laws and how they executed them is just crazy, and it's still existing today. And subliminally, they plant these laws. And they just more key with how they word it now. That's all.
Absolutely.
And let's not forget one small caveat. Whenever they're sending their immigrants over, they were sending some of the worst of their worst.
Terrible. Terrible. The criminals.
Let's not forget who those people were. They were sending the worst. You know what I'm saying? They were trying to take our scholars and scientists and our agriculture and everything else, but they're sending the worst. They're sending their B team, their C team over here.
Sending the ones they don't even want.
They're taking our A team. They're sending the D team. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
That's crazy.
No, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I'm sitting over here just shaking my head. Like you said, I shout out to the ancestor, Dr. Ishenka Musa Barashango. in his books, The European Holidays, African Mental Genocide. He breaks that down when he talked about Thanksgiving. And he said how the criminals came over here. The worst of the worst came over here. Shout out to Dr. Amos Wilson in his book, Blueprint for Black Power. He talked about that as well, how they didn't send their best and their brightest. So I'm telling you, we're dealing with some folks here. But let's move. Yes, insanity. So let's move to the last section of the chapter. Constructive and persuasive efforts, creating the common knowledge of whiteness. Can you brothers build on what was talked about in this particular section? Constructive, and there's only like three pages for this last section. Constructive and persuasive efforts, creating.
Go ahead, brother Sean. She froze for a minute. You want to go in?
So it wasn't just good enough. It wasn't just. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, my internet probably went out, but it wasn't just good enough, right? To create laws that just said, okay, we're going to divide these people. We're going to create this human category called white. They also had to convince white people that they were white, right? Like they had to do something. And so that's what she talks about in this particular subject. I mean, in this particular section, constructive and persuasive efforts, creating the common knowledge of whiteness. So like with black folks, it's common in our community. You're black, I'm black, it's common. But how did that happen? How did we adopt that shared identity? And so that's what she talks about in this particular section. How did white people who were previously called British, Portuguese, Dutch, Christian, how did that shared identity of whiteness, how were they able, the lawmakers, how were they able to create that shared identity of whiteness? Brother Sean P., you wanted to get in.
Well, I'm just laughing thinking about the time period. Like you just said, you've been Dutch or whatever for all these centuries. And like, I got to remind you, you know you're white, right? No, you're white. Remember, you're white, right? Like the first class, the first generation of this, I wonder how difficult it was for them to, I want to say, get along with the program and be on code, accept the brainwash. I wonder how difficult that was for them in that first generation or two to accept that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But I'm looking at it right now, and I'm going back over my notes, and she was saying that the miscegenation laws played a huge role in convincing whites that they were white, so they were, with the laws, they were, influencing who can marry who and creating that divide. And so she was saying that those laws really, so it says right here, anti-miscegenation law offers insight into the understanding of what courts later term the common knowledge of whites. The Maryland legislators worked to shape the meaning of Britishness such that it functioned to signify freedom and the presumption of certain citizen rights and privileges. In the eyes of the Maryland colonial lawmakers, a British woman could only enter into a marriage with an enslaved man if she failed to acknowledge her essence, free. It is somewhat ironic that under this law, being British as a reflection of being free functioned as justification for a law that imposed restrictions, although limiting the freedoms of women, she said, was nothing new. But I'm looking throughout it. And so she's saying that really played a role, those the miscegenation laws of 1664 and 1681, that they really, those enactments of Maryland lawmakers really started shaping the psychology of white people and making them feel like, oh yeah, so there is a difference, or between us and them. But go ahead, Brother Everett. It seems like you wanted to get in, brother.
Yes, and I think it was like on page 75. I'm looking at my notes, because she specifically says in England, access to rights and privileges were rooted in wealth, not shades of skin color. So she's pretty much saying it was, wasn't about the skin color or being from Africa as much. And so they pretty much wanted to get rid of that British thing. They wanted to make sure that we knew over here, and it's kind of that she's pretty much saying it started in America or those colonies, that, you know what, if you want to be privileged, you need to accept being white. And like you said, with the laws of just saying, you have to, if you want to marry a slave, then you got to get rid of your freedom. It's just like crazy, you know, especially if you're free. Yeah, so I thought that was a powerful what you said, Dr. Ma'at.
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Thank you, and I love what you just mentioned. I love that you drove home the point that this was a North American colonist thing, you know, and she does talk about that in the chapter, throughout the chapter, how she said that there were a lot of laws now, right? When they came over, of course, they brought with them the British common law. She said, but then there were laws that were created exclusively for the colonists. So she talked about that. She talked about that.
We know, like in J.A. Rogers, the 100 Negro Facts and the World Greatest Men of Color and things like that. There were a lot of people of color that had prominent status over there in England and all over like that back in the days. You know what I'm saying? Your skin color didn't matter. You could still be of royalty. You could be the Pope and all these things at that time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And one thing I do want to say, and I noticed this, when she talked about, and this is going back to the laws. Okay, so she said the colonists, when they came over, they brought with them the British common law, right? It says right here, North American colonial law largely replicated the common law of Great Britain, okay? When I read some of this stuff, it was very reminiscent of the Bible, okay? And I had conversations with my mother a lot. I said, Ma, in the Bible, they're teaching, promoting, and enforcing European patriarchal culture. And so when I'm sitting here reading what it says right here, by marriage, the husband and wife are one in the law. Well, a man shall leave his wife, shall leave his family and cleave on to his life. They shall, wait a minute, what does this sound like? This sounds like the writing of European people. You gotta, and that's why I tell people it's so important, Brother Sean and Brother Everett, to study history, because like Professor James Small says, history erases the mystery. But you gotta study history. So I'm sitting here reading this. By marriage, the husband and wife are one in law. That is, the very being or legal existence of the woman is suspended during marriage. So the woman doesn't have any rights. Let's go to the Bible now. What happens when a woman gets married in the Bible? Okay, it says right here that the very being and legal existence of the woman is suspended during marriage, or at least is incorporated and consolidates into that of the husband, under whose wing, protection, and cover she performs everything. It said in exchange for all of this, the woman is to be obedient. It says that the male is the head of the household. So when we say these different things, when we talk about these ideas, where are we getting this stuff from? We're getting them from white folks' family. Because if you read in traditional African culture, when a woman married a man, she didn't lose her rights. In some of the ethnic groups, Brother Sean P., she didn't even lose her name. Sometimes the man, when they married, she kept her maternal clan name. Can we talk about it? In African traditional cultures, they talked about ma'at and balance and us being complements. It wasn't a hierarchy between genders. So I just wanted to add that piece. Go ahead, brothers. I just wanted to add that.
You know what, Dr. Ma, correct me, you and Brother Sean can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe also they were people were classified like Christians was like a classification as well. So they kind of tried to change that out, I think. And if I'm not, I don't know if she stated that in the book, but I believe if you converted to religion, if you converted to Christian back then, you could pretty much be free. So they kind of changed that law too. I don't know if she mentioned that law. It might be ongoing, but it's just crazy how all of these laws come. I mean, they just use the law to just like switch it like crazy. And like you said, it started from Maryland, Virginia. It's just sickening in the stomach. Book made me a little sick in the stomach a little bit. Made me a little sick in the stomach.
Absolutely. And you know, and I'm glad that you actually went back to law. She says law is the principal means by which a society defines and regulates itself. Law is an important arena through which to explore and understand social phenomena. So if you want to understand what was going on in the society, study their laws. If you want to understand what's going on in Kemet, go study the laws. You'll find Ma'at over there. You go to the Yoruba people, you'll find Iwa Peli over there. You go to the Dinkra people, you'll find their laws over there.
Right. And I'm gonna tell y'all one short 20-second thing, right? About 2 years ago, I said, you know what, Sean, I want to be more active and more political, so I need to get into the game, right? I took this long ride on the bus to the state capitol here in Louisiana, and I
Mm-hmm.
spent 9 hours at the state capitol in those actual rooms where they make laws, where
Mm.
they vote on laws, where they, deny laws, the whole nine, where they lobbying and all that. If you was to take your time and go there just one day and see how this stuff is ran, it's like WWF wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
It's like WWF wrestling. It was mind blowing to see how these laws are created and made. It's also subjective. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about any of those things you think it's about. Whenever
Oh,
you're
he just
voting
went
for
out,
these
brother.
laws and fighting for these.
Yes, you don't hear
Oh,
him?
that was me.
Oh,
I
okay.
went
All
out.
right.
That was me. Yeah, I went out. No, go ahead, brother. You said they were so subjective. Go ahead, brother.
Well, no, I was on saying just talking about laws right now, just overall period. They change like the wind. They change, like you said earlier, to favor something. Somebody is lobbying for something. Somebody is in a position for something. It's all a big old chess match.
Yes,
And
it
we
is.
all there with our shirts on and we rallying and we in the front yelling for a certain thing to get passed. And these guys know before they even vote. They went to the golf course last Tuesday and they said, man, look, that certain law coming up, man, we ain't voting on that.
Mm-hmm.
And they sit there with their little face all stoic and straight. You do a whole hour-long presentation as to why it's important to your community, and then they go and vote, yay or nay, and these guys nay, 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 nay. Everybody leaves crying, upset. The whole bus ride back, everybody upset and mad. I'm like, this whole fight is fixed, man.
Facts.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fact. That is a fact. All right, brother. So, do you all have any closing words? Hey, family, I see that people are coming in tonight. We are discussing Birth of a White Nation, the invention of white people and its relevance today by Dr. Jacqueline Battalora. You're tuned into the Read Book Club, Regain, Elevate, Aspire, and Determine. All right, we're meeting every Sunday at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time to discuss this book. If you have it, great. If you read it, great. If you don't have it, still join in on the conversations. Brothers, do you have any closing words?
I just can't wait for chapter 2. I mean, this just really messed me up because I'm thinking that, history was we came over here as slaves and, this or that. And, now to find out that, we worked hand in hand with white slaves. We had a rebellion with white slaves. White women would rather marry a black man that's a slave than a white master. I just can't wait for chapter 2. It was phenomenal. This book is phenomenal.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my closing statement, man, I just love being a part of this book club. I'm honored to rub shoulders with you all and go back and forth and break it down. And we learn so much every week. I can't wait for chapter 2 as well, man.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. I'm thinking about heading to Charleston. It's now that we're talking about all this stuff, heading down to Charleston to check out some of those museums down there. I heard a lot of this history that we're even talking about right now, even though it's Charleston, South Carolina, but a lot of that history is still over there. It all ties in to what's happening. But I look forward to this discussion. I just appreciate everybody who joined the discussion tonight. I just really enjoyed the discussion, and I look forward to reading chapter 2 as well. Meet us back here next week, same time, same place. I want to go ahead and share my screen one more time. Brother. Thinking about this sister, I'm telling you, it really got to me, brother, Sister Paula Muhammad. For those who are just joining me, Sister Paul, or joining us, Sister Paula Muhammad, her she transitioned today, and I just want to send her husband, Brother Ramsey, some love. I want to send him some love, and her children. She had 2 children, a daughter and a son. Want to send them some love, and I want to close by playing their music video called Justice or Else. So I want to close out with that. All right, everyone. Peace and love.
You are now about to witness the power of street knowledge.
This ain't for people who think violence ain't the answer. This is for FOI, black gorillas and black panthers. This is Farrakhan with a pair of bombs. This Moses in Egypt freeing his people from the Pharaoh's arms. The American statement to murder us on pavement, then tell us they ain't racist and all niggas stupid cavemen. This is my rebuttal. Ain't shit about it subtle. Fuck the police, sincerely Tesla from the struggle. This country got it twisted. The soldiers I got enlisted are brutal, bullet, ballistic, meaning that we're sadistic from years of fighting the system. So ain't no cop killing me. Death coming free, so my bullets be a trilogy. Allahu Akbar, protect me from these mock laws. Let my fist be strong, I hit them until they lock jaws. My power's attack mode, I live in attack mode. I'm done seeing sons get put in their black holes.
There will be no peace without justice. There will be no unity while there's poverty. See, racism isn't about you. It's a system, and only systems combat systems.
I came in the door, I said it before. I never let the white cops harass me no more, but they fighting me, sniping me. I can't hold them back. I'm searching for a sign. I got to react, cause prisons getting filled here, graveyards filled here. What more can I say? They getting killed here. It's kind of funny they call us the minority until it comes down to cop killers and poverty. Your death rate, oh now we the majority. Can somebody please explain this anomaly? Obviously, structural racism placed all the hate in him, even if he got a black face on him. Don't be surprised if my black blood splatters from a black man screaming Black Lives Matter. Still ain't nothing changed from the slave days to the day. Emmett Till soul screaming justice for Freddie Gray.
We need understanding. We need patience. What we really need is love. See, hate can't erase hate. Understand, only love can.
Whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the beast. Bang, 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 toe tag on their feet. Whoop, whoop, that's the sound of the police. Unknown black man laying dead on the street. Serial killer, the real drug dealer. Domestic terrorists, wear them caps cause it fit. Kill my generation and then tell us to forget. We won't forget black power prophets. Paradigm shift exposing all the lies. Please killing women say it's suicide. Tired of hearing other mamas cry. Whose side will you be on when it's time to ride? They making up lame excuses to justify the abuse. Some put it on how we dressed when Martin got shot in the suit. Black on black crime is a problem, just don't let that justify. I'ma keep protesting till I close my eyes.
That siren is the sound of the beast. Badge number 666. My heart is a crucifix. I repel the hell of white supremacist spells. Terrorist cells got my people in cells. This is a breakout, a breakup letter with oppression. A signed contract with the ghosts of my murdered people. They tell me police gun sounds or drum sounds, it's wartime. And I'm suited in Zulu. Tribe of Shabazz imprinted on my shells with a melanin braveheart. Every word I speak is a rebellion. A spear to the chest of the incest of Uncle Sam fucking his own people. This is a riot in 4D. Play me loud enough, I'll reach to the speakers and strangle a policeman. This is an uprising from the graves. Zombified leaders and gangbangers are marching toward police departments. That's what they get for filling graveyard crypts with bloods. This is a revolution, resurrection.